Overture, cut the lights. This is it, the night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing a part. We know every card by heart. Overture, cut the lights. This is it, we'll hit the heights. And oh, what heights we'll hit. On with the show, this is it.
And here we are, back with another show. I'm Goose with On With The Show, and I am so happy to be here today talking to you about some movies, some interesting TV news, and hopefully some community theater is coming out here in the area very, very soon. Let's get, as it likes to say, let's get on with the show. And let's talk about, first of all, there's some interesting news coming out of Netflix regarding House of Cards. And now, if you haven't seen the teaser trailer, basically, you know, Robin Wright, her character turns around and she says, I'm finally, basically it was an Independence Day type of where she's finally says, I'm independent of you. And of course she's talking about, the Kevin Spacey's character, President Underwood, she's now finished with him and she's moved on from him. And it was an interesting, from what I gathered, I watched an interview on the Today Show with Savannah Guthrie and Robin Wright. And interestingly enough, this was going to be their last season anyway. They were only going to go 6 seasons, and it wasn't going to go beyond this. And the interesting part is the fact that Robin Wright was very, very happy with the fact that they were able to get the show to the end. They were able to get the series to the end of it. They asked her about, everything about Kevin Spacey, and her response was that he was a professional on the set, that they didn't really know much of him off the set. And so they were all very, very surprised about all the allegations of Spacey and his sexual improprieties with young boys. So, I find it interesting but one of the things that I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler to this, because if you haven't seen it, you go to YouTube, you can find the trailer for it. That it basically comes around to the fact that now she is running the country. She's the first lady. Interestingly enough, that's not how government works. Usually the vice president usually is the one that comes in charge. But that's just how it works sometimes. And so what I'm saying is they basically, what happens is the writers come up with things to basically want to get it to where one of the main characters is, the president. This is not a new way of writing. They did it back with Dave, where Kevin Kline played a clone president. He was someone who looked exactly like the president, and so they brought him in to do something, and all of a sudden the president has a stroke and dies, and they bring him in. And they just basically say, just fill the seat. We'll take care of the rest. And he comes to find out that the people behind him, behind the president, are the ones that are running things. They did this with Scandal, where basically the president, I didn't get a chance to get through all the seasons, but come to find out later that, that the first lady ran for president, she won, now she's the president. It almost seems like an interesting little parallel with Hillary Clinton. I'm not going to get political here, but it seems like they created a dynamic here to where the first lady became the president, and that she's actually been the one running things, and that Underwood has just been a puppet of all this other stuff. And it just, I'm wondering how that through line has come through all this time, where the end result was going to be that she was going to be the president after all. So it looks like it'll be an interesting, now the fact that it's going to be a 6th season, a final season without Kevin Spacey is intriguing to me, because you take out one of your main characters, it's very, very difficult for any show to survive, but it has happened. But it will be interesting to see how this works out. I also want to say happy Friday the 13th to everybody. It is Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
Friday
it
the
is
13th.
Friday the 13th.
And interestingly enough, and I'll have a little tribute to this later, but horror films are usually are the best time to watch either around Halloween time or Friday the 13th. So if you want to know, I don't know what your horror films, I mean, there are two different types of horror films. One is you have those that are very tension driven, you have those that are very creepy and they send chills, and then you have those that are like blood and guts and and maiming and all this other stuff. I'm not into that second half of of all the blood and guts thing. Because I think sometimes it's just mindless killing, just kind of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I get it. I understand why people are into it, but but then again, I mean, the kind of films I like are like the original Halloween from John Carpenter. I like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know people kind of like wonder, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a very psychological. Well done film as far as a horror film is concerned, and I think if you haven't seen it, get it off your bucket list because it's really not as bloody and as gory as people think it is, but it's really well done. There are some older films I could highly recommend. Curse to the Cat People, which is a great film. I think it's more. For me personally, I think it's a feminist. Women empowering film as far as A Curse to the Cat People. Your lead character is a woman that apparently changes into a giant black cat and kills people. I like that idea. I love older films like Dracula and the Frankenstein. Some of the newer films that have been out, I can highly recommend. Like again, one of the movies I'm going to talk about a little bit later is A Quiet Place. I highly recommend A Quiet Place. I'll talk about that at the other side of the break. But The Boy I just talked about, last week. That's a really really well done horror film. I think that kind of brings out the chills in what it is you want to see. Cabin in the Woods is another great film. As a matter of fact, Cabin in the Woods to me is one of those films as far as horror films is concerned. And not only is it a great horror film, but it also kind of satirizes the horror film genre, especially the ones where it's like the Cabin in the Woods kind of thing. And now you're coming, lately it's been the horror films where it's been, the giant house, the giant mansion that you end up with. If you want to see some great horror stuff that are not films, they're really good television. My son and I always recommend Ghost Adventures. Those guys are crazy. They go to some of the most haunted places on the planet. You would want to probably see, there's another show called Your Worst Nightmare, done by Discovery ID. And let me tell you something, when it comes to horror, the one thing that I think will chill people the most is the fact that the monster can be living just next door to you. And just creeping the living crap out of you, scaring. I mean, those are some things that I think that will be highly filled. In fact, Tyler, why don't you get that clip that I got up earlier? Because this is one of my favorite clips. I know it's a little funny, it's a little comical, but in honor of Friday the 13th, I want to give you Charlie Brown.
Trick or treat! Can I have an extra piece of candy for my stupid brother? He couldn't come with us because he's sitting in a pumpkin patch, waiting for the great pumpkin. It's so embarrassing to have to ask for something extra for that blockhead Linus. I got 5 pieces of candy. I got a chocolate bar. I got a quarter. I got a rock. Trick or treat! Gee, I got a candy bar. Boy, I got 3 cookies. Hey, I got a package of gum. I got a rock. Trick or treat. I got a popcorn ball. I got a fudge bar. I got a pack of gum. I got a rock.
I got a rock. Seriously, I got a rock. That is one of my. Well, I'll probably show that again near Halloween time, but that's probably one of my favorite clips. I know that It's not necessarily a Friday the 13th horror kind of thing, but it's just something that I find it funny and I find it humorous, and I want to get people kind of in the mood for a Friday the 13th, kind of a fun thing to do. When we come back on the other side of this break, we're going to talk about 3 movies that I caught this week. All really, really good films, and some things that I'm really hoping that you'll be able to check out this weekend. So with that, again, my name is Goose Scott. This is On With The Show, brought to you from the beautiful Bakersfield Music Hall of Fame at KernCast.com. We'll be back right after these messages.
I choose Patriot Bail Bonds.
We choose Patriot Bail Bonds.
We choose Patriot Bail Bonds.
If the best criminal attorneys choose Patriot Bail Bonds, who would you choose?
Patriot Bail Bonds. We fight for your freedom.
Patriot Bail Bonds has the best customer service in Bakersfield. Patriot has more 5-star ratings than any bail company in Kern County. Plus, we're fast and affordable. If you run into the law, make Patriot Bail Bonds your first call. That's right, one call, that's all.
If you're in jail, call Patriot Bail.
Your home is perfect. Until it's not. We understand that life has its changes. As your family grows, we're here to help grow with you. Because taking care of your family is important to you and important to us. Your story starts here with Cornerstone Mortgage.
At the time you were arrested, you were served with a DS-367 temporary driver's license. It's good for 30 days, but if you don't act within 10 days, at the end of those 30 days, your license will be suspended. It's important for your lawyer to contact the DMV for you. Set up a driver's license administrative hearing so that your license does not go into suspension. That's something here at Braemar Law we do for you.
And we're back. Thank you very much for Patriot Bail Bonds for sponsoring the show. If you're in jail, call Patriot Bail. On with the show, as I like to say. And the movie I want, just to let you know, we usually have posters that pop up somewhere near my head. Today, unfortunately, we couldn't get those ready to go. So so we're going to go on without them, which is okay. But today, the big movie that opens this week that's been getting a lot of pub and a lot of press is Skyscraper. Now, Skyscraper is the new Dwayne Johnson film, and it seems like Dwayne Johnson puts out about 3 or 4 films a year. And the last movie he did was Rampage, which I didn't find very impressive. I thought it was one of these films that was highly illogical, highly unimpressive. Which is sometimes the case with Dwayne, because sometimes he'll pick a movie that's really spot on, and sometimes he'll pick one that's really way off. With Skyscraper, this is one where he's right on. And the reason I think of one of the reasons why I like Skyscraper is because in this one, he's not the Superman that we've always been accustomed to. I mean, we've seen him play Hobbs, in the Fast and the Furious films, where he is, like he says, I am the cavalry, where in Rampage, he was this zoologist that was black ops and could knock people out with a chokehold. In this film, yeah, he has the military background, he's got the FBI background, but there's a vulnerability to Johnson's acting and character in this film that he pulls off really well. And I think what also adds to it is the fact that in this film, he plays not a paraplegic, he plays an amputee. He loses one of his legs from the knee down, and this is not anything that I'm spoiling, it's in the trailer. So, and the biggest thing, and the biggest reason that he is, doing this is because he's a security expert that gets caught in the middle of something, and he runs back into this burning building to save his family, who's living in the building at the time. This movie reminds me an awful lot of Die Hard. Mostly because of just some of the logistics of it. You're in one building, you have a terrorist group, you have something that they want, and you have one guy that's willing to risk his life to basically save the people he loves that are in there. The other great portrayal in here is from Neve Campbell, who plays Johnson's wife. She does a great job of playing. She's an army doctor or a military doctor, and she has some tech savvy. But this film is really well done, and it's one of these films that builds as it keeps going along. It doesn't put you in the middle of anything. It lets the story play out. It lets the story move and travel along, and it doesn't leave any of the little details out. And you kind of, even in certain spots, there might be a couple spots where, it's really hard for you to make that, he's not strong enough to do that, he can't really do that, blah, blah, blah. But for me, the story moves along at a good pace that makes everything very, very believable. And I think that a lot of people will be very impressed with the tech-savvy part of this film, because there's a lot of, there's either really, really big tech thing that goes on in these films, or really, really big muscle shoot 'em ups kind of, and this one kind of mixes the two together really well. I think you'll enjoy this film. It's not very long. It's under 2 hours. In fact, it's under an hour and 45 minutes. And so you could probably be able to get in there, watch the film, and get out and be able to get, have dinner or lunch, and really enjoy an evening with you and your kids. It's not that foul-mouthed. There is some violence, but it's not overly done. And like I said, the tension in there builds and builds and builds until it really crescendos at the end. So I think this is a really good film. I think he's got a big hit on his hands with this film, and it's going to be a surprise sleeper hit of the summer that will go along with the rest of the big blockbuster films that have been going on this year. Moving right along, one of the movies that came out on DVD and Blu-ray this week was A Quiet Place. Now, I reviewed A Quiet Place earlier this year, and I highly recommend this film. This movie is great horror film, great tension grabber. Another movie that really starts from, and builds its way up to the very top, to the crescendo of the film. There is an interesting aspect to A Quiet Place if you're going to watch this at home. And I've discussed this with several people, because the way the film is made is the fact that the only way you can truly, truly enjoy it is if you're in total, complete quiet. In other words, you can't have the neighbor's dog barking, you can't have the kids screaming, you can't really pause it to go take care of. It's something that you're going to have to sit down and watch all the way through in total silence, because that's the only way you're going to be able to enjoy this film. Now, and what it made it for a challenge in the theater, because there's hardly any dialogue. A lot of great sound effects, the soundtrack's great, music's building, but at times when you're in there watching A Quiet Place, you could hear the film next door. You could hear the guy behind you scraping every little M&M out of the box. And it could be quite annoying, because you want to sit there, and this film was made so where you had to sit in the theater or sit wherever you were in total silence to enjoy this. That's how this film works. So if you're going to rent this film, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you find a time that, all the kids are in bed, there's no noise going on. It's complete silence, because that's the only way you're going to be able to enjoy this film. It's a fantastic film. It is a fantastic film, and it's probably one of the best horror films of this year. Yes, I said that. It's probably one of the best horror films of this year. Again, it stars Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, who also directed and wrote it. And I can't be more high enough on this film as it is. It's great. It's a great film. Last film on my agenda today, and I happen to be rolling through again. Like I said, I like to roll through the channels, and I like to find some films that, when I'm sitting in my lazy boy at home enjoying the air conditioning, I flip the channels trying to find a film, and I came across this film that a lot of people have been telling me about, called 500 Days of Summer. Now, again, I didn't understand the title until I saw the film. And I went, oh. And what it is to me, some call it a romantic comedy. I'm going to go out on a ledge, and I'm not going to call it a romantic comedy. Matter of fact, it's kind of quite the opposite of a romantic comedy. What it is, it's about Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who plays a guy who got his degree in architecture, but he is working for Hallmark writing greeting cards, which I didn't even know there was a job for. But apparently there is, and he runs into this woman named Summer. That's where I finally figured out where the title came from. And they start a relationship, and it moves, and it's one of those where it's like boy meets girl, and it moves right along to where they have the honeymoon period, and then they have the sex period, and then it's like, and then, they have a time where things aren't going so well, and then they get back together, and you're thinking, okay, this is a typical romantic comedy. And one of the things that this movie does is it will flip back and forth. It will flip back and forth from further along in their relationship to sooner in their relationship, and it shows the contrast of where they were from where they started to where they ended up. And the reason I can't call it a romantic comedy is because in the end, and I'm going to spoil this for you because I can do that, it's my show, but I highly recommend you see it if you get a chance. In the end, they don't end up together. There's a great scene I like this where they meet each other at a wedding, at a friend's wedding, and they spend the time together, and he thinks that, oh, they're going to get back together, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be the way it was before, and she invites him to a party at her house, and he's like, okay, and what you see is a nice, great split screen, and there on one side it's expectations, and on the other side it's reality, and you follow this whole thing from the expectations of what he thinks is going to happen to the reality of what's actually happening. First of all, this is a great way of explaining how things are done in relationships, because there are things that we expect, that we think is going to happen, the expectations, and then there's what actually happens. And I think that 500 Days of Summer really, really communicates this very, very complex and complicated way of which relationships work, and how they evolve over time. If you have a chance to see it, if you come across it, if you get it on DVD or whatever, sit down and watch it. It's a very enjoyable film. I believe it was done in the early 2000s. Again, it stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel. And it is a great, great film about, the actuality of how hard relationships need to be worked on, in this. We're going to have a little bit of a short show today because I got a lot of crazy stuff going on with me. Nothing, I'm just so busy the way my life has been getting. But here's a couple things I want you to think about for some local theater. Stars Theater is still doing Singing in the Rain. They're still selling tickets, and they still want you to come out and check it out. Again, one of the greatest musicals of all time. Go check it out. It's one of the, my son highly loves this movie. They're having auditions at the Stars also for Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night. We can say that 5 times fast. Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night. Check out what type of roles they're looking for. It would be really good. And if I could find something, the Bakersfield Fine Arts Academy, they're doing Willy Wonka. They're doing Willy Wonka, and if I could see exactly where they're doing Willy Wonka, this looks like it is at the Bakersfield, the BCSD Education Center Auditorium. I don't know where that is, but go check it out. It's always great to see youth theater and to see our young ones, do in the arts and to support them in all of this. My name is Goose, here with the show with my trusty producer Tyler. Tyler, say something.
Hey.
He's been quiet over there today. He's been trying to get some other stuff done. We appreciate you watching our show. Again, this is On With The Show here at kerncast.com, the beautiful Bakersfield Music Hall of Fame. Until next week, we'll see you. Go catch a show.
Overture, cut the lights. This is it, the night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing a part. We know every card by heart. Overture.